Hello and welcome to the NBA DFS on the RotoRadar podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer, joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday afternoon, sir?
Doing well. Enjoying the in-season tournament play. Enjoying how chippy
Yeah, man.
things are getting as well. That was the best part about last night by far. And we have some injuries right off the bat to talk about, and a lot of teams on back-to-backs today. Lots of games, so we're going to get some back-to-back scenarios and could see some guys sit. We already see one situation here today, and again, Embiid is going to be a game-time decision. So tons of stuff going on, Josh, but we're here for it.
Yeah, man. Definitely was a good night last night. The prop optimizer continues to be an absolute menace right now. Went 5-0 on Monday, went 4-1 yesterday on top five plays. We're building out some tracking stuff on the back end to end up keeping track of everything and help out the product overall. But that's killing it. We killed it on FanDuel. You and I killed it on FanDuel last night. Very good stuff there. Ended up falling short on DraftKings, ended up falling just short on Underdog because of that Anthony Edwards prop. But
Yeah.
still, we move on to today. It should be a fun one. Like you said, smaller set of games. I talked about it yesterday, 5 through 9, kind of our sweet spot when it comes to games in general. So excited to talk through this one. Lots of injuries, like you said, that we're going to kind of have to tiptoe our way around because of the fact that this is such an early show. If you do want access to the content that will go over those injuries and talk about who's affected and who's not, make sure to sign up. Go check out the link in Jared and I's bio. You can sign up for just $1. Jared, are you ready to get into it, man?
I am ready to get into it. Before we do, I guess I should have said that first. Can we just enjoy NBA 2023 for like 5 seconds and just fathom at the total that we're about to talk about to start off the show? I mean,
Yeah.
245 points. We've been doing this for a very long time, and we used to just be absolutely stoked if games got to 220. So, do you have any comments on that before we get into this first game?
Well, I remember like back when Sean and I did the podcast, like a 2:30 game was a game that we would talk about for 20 minutes almost, just going over all the plays of guys that were available in that game and that were really good options because of that 230 total. The fact that we already had 240s this season and now we're reaching the mid 240s with this one, it's been insane, man. It's been a ton of fun. And it just emphasizes how great of a game this is because this is the one of the two games that get into the 230s. It's the only game that gets in to the 240s, and it's a blast of a game to talk about. So let's do exactly that. Let's
Right.
talk about it, man. First game up, like Jared said, has a 244.5 total. It is the Mavericks facing off against the Wizards. Currently, the Mavericks are 5-point favorites here coming into Washington. A little bit iffy on that spread, but we said we were iffy on a lot of spreads yesterday. I think the Nuggets ended up covering against the Clippers. Maybe it
Just
came pretty
barely.
close. Yeah, just barely. But I attribute that Warriors. Did the Timberwolves cover the 2.5?
Three. They won by three, I think.
So there you go. So both of them we got right, but we were completely wrong in the sense that we expected them to be blowouts because they weren't even close. But I think Clippers one was just a close game. It was a good game all the way around. The Warriors one, I feel like everyone got thrown kind of out of their groove once all the ejection stuff happened. But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
regardless, that's completely off topic. Let's talk about this game. Let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks because we got some big news early this morning saying that Kyrie Irving is questionable for this game with a foot injury. I mean, it could be absolutely massive for Luka here. I know he's 12K, but it feels like a spot, especially after a really disappointing performance against the Pelicans, which we called perfectly on the show yesterday. Um, I think after that disappointing performance in back-to-back games against the Pelicans, he could come out just firing here. I've mentioned the stat a ton of times. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but both of these guards are in the bottom of defensive win shares around the NBA,
Right.
not even amongst starters or anything. Like, this is a very bad defensive backcourt. It will continue to be a very bad defensive backcourt. And I think Luka could just be in the smash spot of all spots, regardless of the Kyrie injury. Like, I think Kyrie being out would be great for him, but I think even Luka with Kyrie would be a spot where he could absolutely dominate.
I think either way, just to hammer down this point early, regardless if Kyrie's in or out, Luka is the best play on the slate. Maybe not point per dollar necessarily, but in terms of cash game plays, he is the best play on the slate for a variety of reasons. And we could go and post a laundry list of them. I think we can keep it relatively short because I think this is kind of a no-brainer regardless. But yeah, you should be playing Luka. You should have immense interest in Dallas. They have the highest team total on the slate by 5 points. The next highest is on this Wizards side. And you got two of the top 10 teams in pace. You got two of the top 5 teams in pace, technically, if you count the update from yesterday. Dallas getting up into that 5 spot to tie with San Antonio. And then you can get into the nitty gritty here with the injury for Kyrie. I mean, he played 25 minutes last night. This is a back-to-back. This is a traveling back-to-back. It's not an in-season tournament game. There's a lot of reasons why Kyrie could sit tonight. So, and then the last thing that I wanted to mention, then we can get into more Mavericks plays because I think it goes further than just Luka, is the fact that I posted this on X earlier, but Josh, we'll talk about the Lakers on the slate too. And this is not a poke at all. It's just the way things are going for your team in terms of pace of play. But if you were to look at this from a macro perspective, the Wizards are running 107.1 possessions per game, which is the highest in the NBA, probably one of the top numbers in the history of the NBA. And the Lakers are running at 97.4, which is dead last in the NBA. And if you were to tell me that the Wizards, just the fact that the Wizards get 20 more possessions than the Lakers is just mind-blowing to think about.
Hey, not a bad thing. Pace does not indicate good or bad teams, in my opinion. Pace is, honestly, I think faster pace.
Not a shot at the Lakers. I'm just saying,
Yeah, no,
they are
I'm just
literally
saying,
sprinting.
Yeah, literally. I mean, that's kind of how this team was built, though, right? Like all the way around,
Yeah.
you have a team that's built for quickness and built to, perform a lot of offense. And I think the Wizards knew what they were bringing in here in terms of the fact that they're not expecting a lot of defense out of these guys. The only way they're going to win is to be able to be faster than the other team on the floor. And that's something that they might be able to do here, is be faster than the Mavericks. And that could lead to a lot of mismatches and a lot of everything. So I think it's very easy to say Luka on this Mavericks team is the top play of the slate. I will say, like, even point per dollar wise, running some projection stuff early this morning for the optimizer, Luka point per dollar might even become one of the best plays of the slate even at this 12K price tag, just with this pace, the guard defense that the Wizards present currently. Everything is working in Luka's favor here. But there's got to be other plays, right? This is the top game of the slate when it comes down to total and everything, and we're expecting it to stay relatively close according to Vegas. So, like, what other pieces are you interested in? Because it gets really hard to get into the Grant Williams of the world and stuff like that when, all these guys are playing around that 20-minute mark. One guy that I could see end up excelling a little bit here could be Tim Hardaway if Kyrie ends up being out. But there's got to be some other options. Who might those options be?
Yeah, I think that you start things off by talking about Derek Lively. I think that he presents himself into a great spot where he's not dealing with that illness anymore. I should expect things to be in the upper 20s of minutes. If Kyrie goes down, potentially getting close to that 30 mark like he did against Charlotte, against the Bulls, put up some nice performances when given the minutes and opportunity. And we know that the interior is just not great for Washington. So he's going to be able to get a lot of points, get a lot of rebounds. And I like his spot for Pick'em. I like his spot for DFS. So Derek Lively is on my list here. I think that if you have a situation where Kyrie is out, you also have to consider Derek Jones, probably more of a GPP play compared to Tim Hardaway, because we know that he kind of is fully dependent on making sure that those 3-pointers go down. This is a great scenario for that. But I would say that, he'd be a little bit further down on my list. But if Kyrie's out, I think you have to play 2 Mavericks, and you could really consider 3.
Yeah, I would say you're considering 3. You're playing 2. I think there's a lot of cases that you could build out that, like, even if Kyrie ends up playing in this one, you could still very well have 3 and not feel all that bad about it too.
Sure.
Let's talk about the other side, because it's not like this Mavericks team is Wizards on the defensive front. They're actually one of the poorer teams in the NBA when it comes to their defensive rating. They're worse than the Wizards. So, like, sure, these Wizards don't have the same pace of play here, But Mavericks are top end with their pace of play too, at least top of the NBA, near the top of the NBA. So like there feels like there should be some plays from this Mavericks team as well. I feel like going back to the well, man. The Gafford stuff worked out so well for us against Toronto.
Mhm.
39 FanDuel points was huge. I mean, that was a very big difference maker that night. Mavericks
Mhm.
just haven't been good inside the paint. And I mean, it's mostly Lively
Correct.
playing center, but like Gafford has another chance to really succeed here. So like if you don't want to go to a Kuzma or a Jordan Poole or a Tyus Jones, then I think you have a really good option in Gafford that might be a little bit different than what the rest of the industry does today.
Sure. I think that one of these centers should be your cash game center today. And again, maybe that changes with some injury news. I know we have that Bucks team that's all over the place. Joel Embiid is questionable, so things can change. But at this moment, I really like a center from this game, and I can get behind that for sure. Like the Gafford stuff. I really do like Kuzma as well, and this has been a situation where he has crushed Dallas, clears all numbers by just huge amounts. He actually put up 30 points in both games against Dallas last season. And I think that, they didn't do anything to improve the defensive side of things. And he's just been more consistent than anybody else on this team. So I like Kuzma still. You could argue that $7,700 is a misprice for this spot. And we just got to like a lot of this game. So I think in a situation where, and we didn't even mention that Maxi Kleber was ruled out just for what it's worth on the other side
Yeah.
when we were talking about the Mavericks. But I think that we need to be interested. If you're rostering three guys for the Mavericks, I think you can find a way to get two Wizards and feel okay. I think you need one though. You do need one.
Are you concerned with Grant Williams' defense? I think that's the main thing you have to think about when you talk about Kyle Kuzma, because that's going to be
Sure.
his defender. That's what they brought him here to do, is defend guys like this, win guys that can put up 30 on them. And I think that Grant Williams' defense, it hasn't been great this season. Like advanced metrics say that like he hasn't been the defender that the Mavericks want him to be. Still, I know that's like his role here, and that's what he's known for doing. So, like in an overall sense, I do get a little bit scared of what that could bring to the table. Um, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on the Kuzma stuff. I know you mentioned the historics being there. I actually didn't know about the historics of how well he'd done against this team, but it is a little bit different of a beast with Grant Williams playing 20 to 25 minutes every night.
Sure. I would just counter that by saying, and I don't know, so I'd have to look after the show. So stay tuned on this if you remember. I would imagine Dorian Finney-Smith played in one of those games last year and was on Kuzma.
Do you
So
hold
I think that's
Williams or
pretty
Grant?
comparable.
Do you hold Williams or Dorian Finney-Smith over? Who do you value as the better
Better.
defender? I value
I don't know.
Williams as
Probably
the better
Grant.
defender. It is
Yeah.
his thing. Like I don't know. I will say like the wing defense is getting a lot better for this Mavericks team. They're doing a good job of putting
Okay.
Grant in there more. They're doing a good job of putting Derek Jones in there as well, who has been their best defender on the season when it comes to defensive win shares. They're doing a lot better to get good on the defensive side in terms of the forward position. So like that's what scares me off of Kuzma a little bit. I think I'm leaning more towards guard heavy if I want to go Poole or if I want to go Tyus Jones, or I think my favorite is Daniel Gafford. I think he clears both of them. He clears all the starters on this team.
I like it. Uh, just to note, so that, and again, peripheral's a big piece of his game, but Bilal Coulibaly looks like he's carving out a role for himself, trying to, it's a lot of wing competition, right? You have Kispert, Gallinari, Avdia, and a few others here that are fighting for minutes. But Koulibaly over the last two games has shown tremendous ceiling. A lot of this is coming from boards and blocks and steals. Is a menace on the boards. The scoring we should take with a grain of salt a little bit, but I do think that it's a solid. Like if you're looking for other plays and you think Kuzma's not the guy today, I would at least mention him in tournaments.
I love Bilal, man. I love I've watched a few of his games so far just to kind of get an idea of him as a rookie, and he's hustle. He's all hustle out there when it comes to getting those extra stuff like steals and blocks, and sometimes that's half the battle when it comes down to it. So I think in that close game against Toronto, I'm going to go double check the game flow right now, but if I can remember correctly, yeah, he closed out that fourth quarter, and I think that kind of speaks to the fact that they're going to have him in there more often than not when it comes down
In
to
place of who?
getting stops. In that game, it was Gafford that they had him in there in place of. Gafford did not play at all in the fourth quarter,
Okay.
and Bilal did. Now that could be very matchup dependent because Jakob didn't play in the fourth quarter of that Toronto game. So like they didn't need Gafford out there to play the center role.
Right.
They could end up putting out an extra defender. I would say this Mavericks team could very well do the same thing. Sit lively, end up playing Grant Williams as your small ball center, and end up having a guy like Tim Hardaway in there instead of Derek Lively or instead of any center, and could end up benefiting them down the long stretch. So something to keep in mind when
Interesting.
it comes to that center conversation is that
Sure.
either one of these guys could just not play the fourth and getting 25 minutes and maybe screwing your night, kind of going against my Gafford point earlier. But all right, we've talked about this game pretty in depth. I think we capped this one off because we kind of been all over the place with saying, what are your three top plays from this game on both sides?
Three top plays, Luca number one. Then I would say it's a combination of. Can I just say center as number two? I think
Yeah.
both centers are very solid. And then number three, I think, is completely dependent on Kyrie stuff. My go-to would be Tim Hardaway in that event.
I think I'll go number one, Luca. I will go number two, saying that, you know what, I really like the stuff we talked about with Bilal. I'll say Bilal's number two. I think the fact that he's closing out now just means they're really starting to trust him there, and more minutes means more everything for him. So I'll say
Sure.
Bilal at number two. And I'll say number three goes to that either center position or Kyrie position, whoever benefits off of that. Last question I have for you, and then we can move on to pick 'em stuff. If Kyrie does play, this is a 245 total game. We know that Kyrie and Luka make up for almost 50% of this team's scoring night in and night out. How viable is it to play both of them tonight?
I think that if he's playing, he's good to go. He might not be 100%, but I think he gives 100. Right? They give him the minutes to get close to that 100% mark. And even if he falls short of 35 minutes, I think he still has potential for 40 plus fantasy points, which is what you'll need to get there. I'm checking his price on DraftKings right now. He's 8,800. Maybe this is a FanDuel only conversation.
How much do you need from both of them combined to end up feeling good about your night after this first game?
The way that I'll cap this off is that I think this is one of the few scenarios we're going to see this year where somebody truly has a 100-point ceiling.
Yeah.
Luka has a potential to get 100 today. Is it probably less than 10% chance, less than 5% chance, but it's as good of a chance as anybody's going to get this season, probably in this spot. And if Kyrie sits, I think that's where that would be. But if they're together and they're playing, that accounts for 20,600 salary. You would need over 100 fantasy points for that to happen. So
I
that's your
think
answer.
you, I
110.
think you, yeah, I was about to say, I think you legitimately need like 125. I think you're going to need Luka to end
Yeah.
up getting you 70 plus, and you're going to need Kyrie to get you 50 plus to feel really good about that situation. And that's not to say that it's not viable. It's just, you need a game stack if you're going to go that way. I think you should have Luka, you should have Kyrie, and then you should probably have Poole on the other side and probably Bilal as well to feel really good about where that puts you. And salary wise, I mean, like, yeah, Luka's bad, but the rest of it's not that awful. It leaves you pretty open for other options. Okay, we've gone pretty in depth
Last
here.
note before we get into pick'em, let's at least mention that the total went down a half point with the Kyrie news. It's at 244.5 now. I'm not concerned about that, but it is noteworthy that Dallas is now a teetering between a 4.5 and 5 point favorite. They were
Yeah,
6.
yeah. I would say you have the spread already leaning towards Kyrie being out, but that's just my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. I haven't been the best at reading spreads this year, so take it for what it's worth. All right, let's move on into the pick'em conversation. Let's start off with the Mavericks. Um, I think you start off with Luka numbers, and honestly, I think everything's pretty low. To be honest with you, like
Yeah.
I think 31 and a half points is very much a number that's gotten from the fact that he performed so poorly against the Pelicans.
Mm,
And I'm eating it up. I think everything's good to go. 31.5 points, 49.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I would lean on PRA over fantasy score. I think that at the end of the day, he's not really a steals guy. And so I'm fine with
a
not getting
lot of
those steals and
turnovers.
blocks. Yeah. Yeah. And lots of turnovers. That's a great point. And who knows? I mean, there's a very realistic chance that they put Bilal on him, maybe. And maybe that could be a little bit scary in terms of giving up a couple of steals here and there. So
Sure.
yeah, I think I lean with PRA.
I agree. I lean with PRA. I don't like the turnover stuff and then without Kyrie, that turnover number potentially gets worse for how much usage he'll
Yeah.
have tonight.
Yeah.
211 possessions expected today. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
For sure.
But yeah, PRA, love it. It's under 50. Just take it right now before it. This is the benefit of doing the show early, but it's also the detriment where we won't post plays for another couple hours. So
Yeah.
I think if it sits under 55, you're taking it today.
Without a doubt. All right, let's talk about anything else you like for the Mavs. I in DFS, I think it's a different conversation. I think you can definitely play one of these guys. I think all these guys are appropriately priced, and the fact that like no one's being like a real 30-minute contributor on this team right now is going to have me stay away from them in terms of props.
Just one, but I'm at a number now where I'm probably going to stay away. Uh, Derek Lively wrote it up at 6.5 rebounds. We talked about that previously, so if you need the take, just listen to the show after we're done recording. But I won't play it at 7 even. I'll just sit on the sidelines. But do you have 6.5 on your end?
I have 7 on my end.
Yeah, if it goes down to 6.5, feel free to take it. Or if you want points, rebounds, that's fine too. But Luka's the best play on this team.
I will say that the optimizer loved 5, which you got yesterday. It was like a top 5 value play. It easily smashed. You end up getting 9. I almost guarantee you matchup and pace induced. It'll be back up on the optimizer board again today as at least
Sure.
projected as over 7. I'm not sure where it'll come in at value wise. Okay. Let's talk about the other side. Talk about this Wizards team a little bit. I I think it comes back to the fact that like I really want to bet on Jordan Poole. Um, I just don't know, one, what defender he ends up getting, and two, I worry a little bit that he gets Derek Jones Jr., and that could be a slight issue. And if Kuzma ends up getting Grant Williams, it could leave some stuff open for Tyus. So maybe 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists is where you can go there. Um, and maybe it's just Bilal numbers that you can really like here. Currently, nothing up on the board. I assume we'll have stuff later on Bilal once more props get put up. But what are your thoughts on this Wizards team?
We'll start with Bilal. I have some stuff here. He has a 14.5 PRA. Not giving us anything crazy in the block steal stuff, but if they do have a scorcher on Underdog Fantasy for a half a block, so if you want to get a 1.25 there, that's actually really solid. I like that. Kind of weird that they have that sitting at a half, but anyway, that's there. I think that I would also be somewhat interested in the Daniel Gafford stuff, points wise. 9.5 points is where that sits, and I mean, there's obviously fourth quarter closeout risk there too. I think I'm still on the side of leaning Kuzma anyway. With the amount of possessions in the environment here, I just, if Grant Williams locks him up a little bit more than he's used to, still think that he probably gets to 23.5 points.
I mean, hey man, we said Scotty would lock him up. Scotty's a top 5 defender in the NBA right now. I think we can both agree on that. And he still
Yep.
scored 34 against Scotty. So like maybe it's getting to a point where Kuzma's putting up enough shots where he's pretty close to matchup proof. And that could totally be the
Yeah.
case. And if that is the case, the pace alone should get him to 24. All right. I really like this game. It's a really fun one to talk about, but let's move on to the next one. An equally fun game, but maybe for different reasons, mostly because of the fact that these are two juggernauts going up against each other once again. It's the Celtics facing off against the 76ers. 76ers are at home. Over-unders at 224 and a half. We just saw the 76ers play a really tight game against the Pacers that I don't know if you got the chance to watch it, but was a really, really fun one. Let's talk about the Celtics first. We have a lot of questionables coming into this one, which is going to make it pretty tough to break down. Kristaps is currently questionable with a knee injury. Jaylen Brown currently questionable with a illness. What do we think here? Let's play the hypothetical game first. Let's say Jalen and Kristaps are both out. Is Tatum a lock and load?
It's pretty dang close. Uh, he has not done well in the points category as Tatum in this matchup lately, and this is through an entire playoff series last year too. Struggled in the first game from a points perspective, but really put it together in other angles. Regardless of injury, this is a game that has some niche stuff on both sides, and I think that injuries are only going to play into it a little bit further. It's not an in-season tournament game, but it certainly is going to feel like that in terms of atmosphere. So I think that we kind of have to just play into what happened the last time these two teams played, which was about a week and a half ago. And then, you kind of just have to say that Boston comes in today with the slight advantage because they didn't play last night and Philly kind of let one go. I think maybe that's a little bit to discredit the Pacers because I think that they are a playoff team in the East, but I do think that this is a huge window to get right. You're going to have a lot of guys probably locking at 7, and that's the only game at 7 in that first game we talked about. So that'll be nice to lock that in, feel good about it. But there's also a part of me that's thinking maybe we shouldn't maybe we shouldn't jam in everything to a point where we can't be flexible later. So that's kind of the risk you run with this situation here. I'm not too sure where I lean with injury, but Jaylen Brown having an illness day of stuff is not great. Missing shoot around, not great. So I think that if you see Brown and Kristaps out, you have to probably try to find a way to play 2 Boston guys.
Yeah, it's just really the question of who, right? Like I don't think you have the money to get the Tatum spot, which is a little bit of a concern with going to Luka today. Like I don't think you can really fit in 2 10K guys, Luka being 12K, so early on in the slate when there's a lot of other fantasy goodies here. Like where this is just the beginning of it's a really
Sure.
awesome slate overall. Like
Yep.
I'm not sure if the value is there yet. The Giannis news certainly helped us out there.
Yep.
I I don't know. It's going to kind of be a wait and see. You're going to have to wait and see what happens with the Celtics team and what other value can open up for you if Tatum ends up missing here, or not
It's a
Tatum.
tough
Sorry, if
one
Tatum ends up being
because
the guy.
it's really tough because I don't know if Tatum is a better point per dollar play. This is where FanDuel and DraftKings, like if you guys aren't huge FanDuel and DraftKings players, like this is what you have to think about in terms of a price structured system. Like I don't think that, not to jump too far ahead here, but I don't think that Tatum's a better point per dollar play than Dame is today at 2K difference of money. Um,
Oh yeah.
I
Uh,
don't know. Like those are the questions you got to ask yourself.
I think that we'll talk about the Dame situation soon, but I think there's a lot of stuff here that makes me fall under the radar uh, with Boston overall. Um, I don't know. It's going to be tough. What do you think about the Drew Holiday situation? Because I would say like that's your better matchup. I know he performed pretty poorly against this team last time they faced off against each other, but he should be the second guy in this system. If KP and Jalen are out, that could be a massive scoring opportunity against a guy like he probably gets to Anthony Melton. He probably doesn't get Maxi, but still, I don't think it's a bad matchup for Drew.
I think that this is a spot where I'm reading it a little bit differently here. There's number one, you get this spot where if there's 2 guys out for Boston, you got to feel really good about the starting unit. And I do think that, Derek White is probably going to be fine if that happens as well. But I do think that Drew, that was the first game, or like the first 5 games of this new system with him. And I don't know. I just think that he's going to be a guy that just takes back seats sometimes and is focused on taking care of other things. He probably was 100% focused on Tyrese Maxey in that game, and that makes sense. But if he's forced to score, then he's going to be forced to score, and I think that that's probably what you would get in that spot if those 2 guys are ruled out. You get a lot of shots that are just up for grabs now. 20 at least 25 shots, right? So
Yeah.
You go from there, and then you also get somewhat of a narrative here too. Whereas, the last time the game was in Boston, this time it's in Philly. The 76ers drafted Drew in 2009 in the first round. So there's something to say there too.
Derek White could also be a guy that, like, if both of these guys are out, he plays 40 minutes and ends up just stuffing the stat sheet at the 6K price tag. Um, he's done well in this matchup before. In the first time they faced off against each other this year, he ended up having 38 FanDuel points. And last year when they faced off against each other towards the end of the season, he had 40 FanDuel points. So I don't mind the Derek White spot either. I think you're getting a really good price tag there. And again, this is if multiple guys end up sitting, which we've kind of just got to wait and see on that front.
Yeah. Do we feel anywhere bullish on this if one guy sits?
Yes, I think if Jaylen Brown sits, it's a massive spot for either one of these guards. I think if KP sits and Jaylen Brown plays, it gets into a stickier situation where probably the only interest I have is Al Horford.
Yeah, who also played for the Sixers, knows how to guard
Yep.
Embiid.
Yeah, he was around because that's why the Celtics signed him, is to be the Embiid guy. So
Mm.
we'll have to wait and see on that front. Let's talk about the other side, Jared. Let's talk about the 76ers team. They're dealing with their own set of injuries here coming off of the back-to-back. We knew Joel Embiid was questionable with that hip injury coming into yesterday's slate. He ended up playing, had a monster game. 39
Yep.
points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. Really good game from him. He is questionable again. I would say back-to-back questionables. This game means a lot. Don't get me wrong, but we know how important the in-season tourney is to these players. I think Joel Embiid sits today. I feel fairly confident on the fact that Embiid ends up sitting this one out.
And Vegas would probably agree with you here. Even with two guys on the questionable side for Boston, they're still 5-point favorites on the road. So
Yeah.
that would kind of lean
In a
towards
game they
me saying
lost. Remember,
Joel's worth 2.5 points, probably.
they lost against the 76ers last time out. So
Correct.
they're 5-point favorites, but with a loss, that seems like Embiid. They're leaning towards Embiid sitting. So we know that Embiid is questionable. We'll wait on his determination. Tobias Harris went in for concussion protocol yesterday. He ended up coming back out, playing the rest of the game. He's probable with a neck injury. We know Batum is still going to be out due to those personal reasons, though. What else do you see from this Philly team? Because I think the maxi spots, I would say it's kind of tough, but he had 50 FanDuel points against Boston last time they played, and that was with Drew Holiday draped all over him. We saw DeAnthony Melton take a huge step yesterday that I think could encourage more shooting today. And I think Tobias Harris is in a good spot. I think if we do get Embiid out, I really do like the Paul Reed spot as well as the guy who's going to get a majority of the center minutes. Um, there's a lot of options here, man. It feels like the 76ers could provide you with a lot of value, or you could end up spending up on some of these guys.
I like DeAnthony Melton a lot. I think that the shot volume we saw yesterday was solid. He probably won't shoot 60% from the field again in back-to-back days, but you never know. And the spot still, it's a little bit down in pace, but Boston's still running fast, and so are the Sixers, actually. And if Embiid's not playing, this game runs faster. So I like Melton. I think Maxey is okay. You're just going to be squeezed on price today because of him being so expensive, and there's being other options that are probably better. So Melton is fine. I like Tobias Harris. I think that he's solid. Wouldn't play him if Embiid was in, though. And this gets really this is all about just like if Embiid is in, then I don't think he should be playing any Philly guys. And if he's out, then you play and try to find a way to play at least one.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I can feel pretty comfortable with that analysis. Ready to move over to the pickup side of things?
Yeah, this is the 7:30 window is very strange today after following what is the best game on the slate in the first game.
Yeah. Celtics only have one guy on the board for me, and that is Jason Tatum. I wouldn't take anything until you know further news. Do you have anything on your side?
I still have Brown and Porzingis here, so I'm not sure how to feel about that. They probably are just they gave me the starting lineup today, so it is what it is. There, I don't really have any strong leans, and you're taking a massive risk on these guys being in or out. And if they're all healthy, I think that those numbers just aren't great at the moment. I did write up, and I wanted to mention that Jason Tatum rebounds, assists has cleared in every single, or not every single game, but 10 out of the last 12 games they've played against Philly. Just has something to do with the fact that he can't score consistently against this team and is more active on the boards and assists. So
Yeah,
we
I
saw it.
like
He
that.
had 15 boards in the first game.
Yeah, I like that number there. I definitely don't mind going. You said Tatum, right?
Tatum, 13 and a half rebounds, assists.
Yeah, I like that. It's at 14 on PrizePicks, so go take it over at Underdog if you are going to play the prop. Let's talk about this 76ers team. Only two guys I have on my board is Maxey and Embiid. What do you have?
I have Embiid, Maxey, Harris. I'm probably just off of this team as of right now. And I think
I
that's
would agree.
probably just, there's no real reason at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on. If you're ready to, let's move on into this next game.
Yep, let's do it.
Next game up is going to be your Bucks facing off against the Toronto Raptors. Currently, the Raptors are coming in as 1.5-point dogs at home. Over-unders at 224.5. Got the news right before we came on the show, actually a little bit before, but still got the news that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be out for this one, alongside Chris Livingston and Jay Crowder, who is going to be out for a while. This Bucks team is left with Dame as their main guy now. Bobby Portis most likely slides into the starting lineup. Brook Lopez going to be in a good spot, I think. Is Middleton going to get his minutes restriction lifted at all in this one? Or is he still going to hover around that 20 mark?
It's tough to say. I think at some point or another they have to start taking chances and increasing this a little bit. I don't know what to say about it as of right now. I really hope that we do get news to say that. I don't think that. So the thing I don't think that happens, at least tonight, I don't think that they'll come out and say that there's no restriction. I think they'll still say something about he's going to be capped under 30, if they say anything at all. I would say that as of right now, you probably can't play him in cash because of this restriction. But if we get any news saying that he'll be increased a little bit, and he gets 5 more minutes, potentially some closeout stuff, then I think 25-minute Chris Middleton can hit value at 5,400. So that answers your first question.
Yeah, I tend to agree. If he gets 25 minutes, I really like the spot. If he is staying at 20, I think it's a little iffy at 5,400. I think you're banking on some really high point per minute production there. Let's talk about Dame, man, because I mean that's the guy that everyone is going to talk about. He's at 8,100, a really poor showing against Chicago. What do you think about this spot? How are you handling the fact that they're minutes watching him, which he doesn't really feel like because he played 32, but I mean, I guess it's less than he would play in a normal game because he's been in like the high 30s. What do you think about this Dame situation against Toronto where he's going to take on most likely Scotty Barnes? Like I would be shocked if they didn't put Scotty on him.
How many times can Dame have a bad shooting game before he bounces back? I don't know. I think that I'm willing to say things get better here. I'm not going to guarantee 40 fantasy points, but I think that if you're playing it tonight, you expect 30 plus minutes and 20 plus shots taken. So if those things add up, then I think that that's where I would see it. And he's obviously thrived in games without Giannis. So I believe that wasn't that Detroit one without Giannis?
Yes.
Or am I wrong
think so.
here?
I think so.
No. Well, Giannis played 20 minutes and got ejected. That's what happened, I think.
Yeah. Kind of, but not really. But yeah, not really in terms of him being fully without him. But yeah, definitely did well there. Definitely was able to shoot a little bit more. I feel like Dame's just getting used to right now sharing the offense with another superstar. He hasn't had to do it in. I don't think there's ever been a guy beside him that really feels like a true superstar, a true top 5 player like Giannis. I mean, was McCollum a top 5 player? I don't think so. Like this is a
in
true
that
1A.
one season, he probably was top 20. 25.
Yeah, this is a true like 1A, 1B instead of 1 and 2 that he's been so used to. So I think he's getting used to it. I think the fact that he'll be able to be in that 1A situation or that one situation here is tremendous. I like the spot for Dame. I'm a little bit worried about the minutes watch. I would love to hear some comments from the coach about what that might look like today. But if we don't get it, I think that the rest of the industry just plays him. So I think you're almost forced into a spot. Like we're going to get, if he doesn't do well here, we're going to get Dame under 8K. And that's going to truly be a sight to see.
Correct. I agree. This game has already happened once. It was in Toronto, and they got embarrassed. It was a back, or not even back to back situation. They just didn't show up for the game. Really bad performance all the way around. All the starters did not play the fourth quarter. With Giannis out, I know that they're a 1 point favorite. There are pathways to this being ugly again, and I think you have to play Bucks because of the Giannis stuff. But how do you feel about that? Knowing that news now.
I think that, we haven't talked about the other side, but it's a good transitionary point where we can kind of go back and forth here because there's still some Milwaukee value plays to talk about. I think
Yeah.
Toronto potentially missing OG and Gary Trent again is huge. I mean, if the Wizards are able to stay close with that team, and I get Wizards probably played their top ball of the season that day, especially with Kuzma scoring so well against a tough defender. Um,
hmm
they're going to be it's going to be a relatively close game, I think. I don't even mind saying the Bucks win this one, just with OG
Okay.
being such a key
Okay.
part of that defense.
Sure. News as of right now says they're both doubtful.
Yes,
I
I
know
would
being
imagine
Trent.
they both miss. I feel pretty confident in saying they both miss with that doubtful tag. And so if they're both going to be out, you also potentially miss your playmaker and Dennis Schroeder. That's huge, man. I mean, I don't think people give Schroeder enough credit for what he's been doing with this offense. He has like the
hmm
fifth most potential assists per game right now uh,
Sure.
in the whole NBA. So like he's really running the offense extremely well. If we end up getting Dennis Schroeder out, and without the Milwaukee Bucks having like that top tier guy that can take away on ball stuff, Scotty looks like a really, really solid option, man. I mean, he's going to be running
Yep.
point guard most likely. I know Siakam was the guy who ended up coming through with the really big game against Washington, but I could see it all going back to Scotty in this one without, like who do they throw at him? Like Bobby's too slow, Middleton's injured. I guess you throw like a Connaughton at him when these guys are off the bench, but when the starters are in, it's going to be incredibly tough for this team to cover Scotty.
They will not have the guy to do it. It'll be a little bit of everybody. Bobby Portis, I would assume, takes the main portion of that, but he's not a great defender either. So um, things fall apart when Giannis doesn't play defense or isn't around. So I think that this game has a really good shot of hitting the over because of that piece of news. But to bring this thing full circle back to your Siakam point, it's because they didn't have Gafford and Pirtle close out.
Mm-hmm.
Pascal was the 5, and they just got wrecked on the interior.
Yeah.
So I think that today Siakam probably. I mean, they'll play Pirtle because of Brook Lopez, but I think Siakam potentially. I think he's going to be okay just because of the other guys being out, and that's just going to drive more usage to him. But I'm taking Scotty on this team first before anybody else. Like he is,
Mm-hmm.
if there was a guy that you would try to spend up and grab that's up in this range up at 10K, you try to get here. Which side do you lean though in cash? Because again, Luka, we talked about Tatum. This feels a little bit more determined, whereas Boston Philly is up in the air. So do you have to pick one side, or can you play Barnes, Luka, and Dame in the same build?
I don't know if you can. I mean, like we're just going to need more injury news before you can make like a pure determination there. Um, without knowing exactly what that or what all these other questionable tags look like. I don't. If everyone were to play that's questionable right now, I don't think you'd be able to. I don't think you'd have the money to be able
Mm,
to.
on FanDuel, I think you do. I
Okay.
think you can play Luka, Lillard, Barnes, and you can play a lot of 5K pieces and some Bucks guys. Portis still under 6K helps as well. But you're going to have to play a guy that's, or maybe one or two guys in the 4K range. On DraftKings, I don't think there's a way you can play Luka and two of those guys. You got to choose between one of Barnes, Lillard, Tatum.
For sure. All right. Anything else here? If not, you want to talk about Milwaukee value really quickly because we saw
Sure.
Marjon Beauchamp end up getting really involved in that game. We saw Pat Connaughton play 28 minutes. Um, who do you think ends up taking a big jump without Giannis there? Because now Bobby's not on the bench, and that's kind of huge for this
Correct.
bench production.
Yeah, Bobby will start, and he will see the most minutes that he's seen all season. I would assume that cracks over 30, and we know he's a huge point per minute guy. Really destroyed the Bulls, and we're happy that we still remember that take. Outside of that, they are giving some guys some extra run here. Livingston being out certainly could draw some interest with Griffin a little bit. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of just a shot, not really a shot in the dark necessarily. Did I say Griffin? I think yeah. I don't think he's just on the two-way. Anyway, like I think that this is where the Middleton piece comes in really in a weird spot. I would think that you could. It just feels like a stretch to say you should be playing him and not thinking otherwise as of right now. And maybe we get news here in 2 hours that says that he's going to have his minutes limit lifted a little bit. That would be the easy answer. I feel really gross trusting in Beasley or Connaughton or even Beauchamp to cover enough here to get you 20 plus fantasy points. So I'm a little bit less excited about anybody not named Dame or Bobby Portis. But I think that Bobby, regardless if you want to play Dame, I think you have to play Bobby today.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Really quickly, Toronto value. Otto Porter fell incredibly short, even though getting into the starting lineup. We saw that they didn't end up closing with him anyway. So a little bit of a missed call there on our part. But we saw Grady Dick get a big chunk of minutes. I am halfway tempted to say that, like, I know it was a really poor showing, but knowing how much Milwaukee can give up the long ball, I would halfway say that I'm interested in Grady Dick being a pretty good value option here.
I'm intrigued by something here, and I don't really know where to put it, but I would say it's one of those. It's one of Grady, one of Otto Porter, and then keeping an eye on what happens with Dennis Schroeder because, and this also feels gross too, but Malachi Flynn playing 30 minutes at 4K. That's just what you're going to have to dive into today. The only problem with that is you have to stomach playing him only at point guard.
Yeah. You say you feel gross. He closed that Toronto game. I was just looking at closers because I was curious if Otto didn't. Huh? Dennis did not get hurt. Dennis played the whole fourth quarter, or almost the whole fourth quarter. Their closing squad was no, he didn't. Dennis played the closing squad was Dennis, Pascal, Scotty, Chris Boucher, shockingly, and Malachi Flynn.
Okay.
Anyway, anything else here, Jared? If not, let's move on to pick'em stuff.
Feels like you're playing all the plays at 7 to 7:30.
Yeah, man. You definitely have to get your exposure where you can. Let's talk about some of these pick'em options. Let's start off with the Bucks. You know, something we attacked for that Washington game was the fact that they are so bad on the interior. The Raptors currently have one of the worst defenses against the center position. Brook Lopez has not been able to get it going, man. But, like, I don't know how you don't get it going here without Giannis. I feel like maybe Bobby Portis is a little bit more aggressive, and that takes away some things here. But it feels like this should be a Brook Lopez spot.
It does, and I think the reason that it is struggling right now is because with Dame out of the lineup, with Giannis and Dame not being able to figure out their own pick and roll, Brook Lopez kind of just gets lost there, and he's usually just not involved in that scenario. We've also just seen Dame do the pick and roll with Brook and then just not pass it. So that's part of it as well. But I think that he is okay. Again, I think you want a center, just to take it back to FanDuel DraftKings, I want a center from that Washington and Mavericks game. I think Brook Lopez is a fine tournament play, and that would be a spot where you'd fade Portis and play Brook. In terms of playing him, 12.5 points, I'm just going, until we see more, I'm just going with Brook points and not going with anything else. Because I think that if you're going to get it going, I don't want to rely on rebounds and have that fall short.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Anything else here that you like from Milwaukee? The Dame stuff feels incredibly high at 28.5 points, 43 fantasy score. Like, I guess that's what we're hoping for if we play him, but I don't know. Feels a little inflated to me.
I like the fantasy score. The flash sale period's expired, so if you got that in, you should feel good about that at 26.5 PRA. But other than that, I don't really love taking these numbers at where they are. I think that they're pretty accurately priced. Looks like we're going to get, as far as Underdog Fantasy is concerned, it looks like we have this 20 to 22 minute cap for Middleton pretty locked in. And you don't have Bobby Portis numbers for me, which was what I would have wanted. Give me all the Bobby Portis points if they're under 15.
Let's see. I feel like I just saw the number. Oh, I did not. Yeah, we'll have to wait for that Bobby Portis stuff to come out, but should be some interesting stuff there. All right. Anything else in this game? If not, let's move on to the next one.
Scotty Barnes fantasy.
Oh, yeah. What is it at? Oh, you
I don't
don't
know.
have it. I have it.
I would assume it's at like 45, and if that is it, I think he goes for 50 today.
They do not have it up yet. They have 35.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I would say I'm just fine with that. I know he didn't hit it in the Washington game. Oh, go ahead.
The reason that he's gotten there a lot of times is because the steal numbers have looked really good. So I think I'd want just a fantasy number.
I think that in this spot where the Bucks guard the paint pretty well, every single one of Siakam's shots made in that game against Washington was inside the paint. There was not a single outside shot made for Siakam. I think with Scotty having more of a mid-range game and being able to shoot the three, I am perfectly fine with taking PRA. I know it didn't hit in the Washington game, but once he started getting going in the third and the fourth, it got really close. Like it looked like a clear miss early on in the night. But once that game started getting going, he got really close. So I think he has a chance to get there in a better matchup overall. Which is weird thing to say against with the fact that they're playing a better defensive team. But I think overall, like the game works more towards him getting the work than it does Pascal getting the work again.
Sure.
All right. We've gone over this game in depth. Jared, are you ready to move on to the next one?
Yes.
All right, let's do exactly that. Let's start off talking about this next game. It is the Knicks facing off against the Hawks. Currently, the Hawks have a 1.5 point favorite, or are a 1.5 point favorite. Over under is set at 229.5. Let's talk about this Knicks team first. Currently, we don't know the status of RJ Barrett. He's currently questionable with this migraine. If he ends up missing again, I think the thing is, like, he really helps this offense go, man. I know that, like, Jalen ended up performing pretty well. I was really pissed. I put out a free play on Twitter about Jalen Brunson under and felt really confident about it against Drew Holiday. Just completely whiffed because I got that news, like, right after I posted. And unfortunate timing for sure. But still, I think that, you know, they're going to have DeJounte on him. It's going to be a tough matchup for him. They're going to have Hunter on Julius Randle. It's going to be a tough matchup for him. Guys like Quickly can get it going for this team, but I don't know what to do with the Knicks when they're missing RJ.
It just doesn't seem as important as the two previous games and the third game that, you know, obviously we'll wait on Kyrie stuff. But pecking order, this is at the bottom of my list. The Knicks are running at the third slowest pace, and I don't know. I don't feel as good about it. I think the game itself is competitive and okay, but in terms of games we've talked about 4, or this is our fourth. This is my least favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. I will say, like, I'm not completely disinterested in it. I think if RJ misses, like, something should be in play, and I think that's more likely a value play than like playing up for a Julius or a Jalen Brunson. I think Hart getting a good chunk of minutes. He got 43 against Boston. Like, if they play him at that length again, I'd be really interested in Hart. I think Quickly can get going. I know he kind of failed against Boston, but tougher defenders for sure. Man, when are they going to get Dante DiVincenzo going? That feels like such a wasted piece on this Knicks team right now. I know you're missing him, I'm sure.
Nova culture.
Nova culture indeed. I think I'd be most interested in Josh Hart if we got the news that RJ's going to miss again. If RJ plays, I'm not interested in anything. I can pass.
Sure. I agree with you. If RJ does not play, then I don't have any interest. The problem that I have is, like, do you want to play Josh Hart, or do you want to play? By that time, you'll know if Kyrie's in or out. So that's Denver or the Dallas pieces. Bilal, Avdia, Bobby Portis. Those guys are all in the same range.
Yeah. I think it is such a massive pace up spot, though. Like, Hawks are
Oh, it
playing.
is. It's probably the biggest discrepancy on the slate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Hawks are playing third in pace right now. Knicks are all the way down at second. So massive pace up spot. It feels like if there's an
Yeah.
injury here, you've got to get a piece of it. It's the opposite for the Hawks. They go up against a team that is one of the top three defensively rated teams in the NBA. It's a huge pace down
hmm
spot. I have no interest in the Hawks, especially with Trae Young being back.
That was my point. Trae Young back. I'm absolutely not interested in anything.
For sure. All right. Any pick'em stuff in this game? Let's talk about pick'em stuff. I feel like I said, you're not taking a bet on the Knicks until you know the injury situation, and I'm not really interested in the Hawks.
I have one play, and it's a guy that you're probably just not going to be playing on FanDuel or DraftKings, and that is Mitchell Robinson. I think that in this spot, you'll have to go, and he's going to have to go up against Capella and Okongwu. And he's cleared points, rebounds in this spot pretty consistently. Last season, he hit it in all three games that they played, including this one that they already played a couple weeks ago, on whatever opening week it was. So I like Mitchell Robinson, and that's the extent of what I like.
For sure. All right. Let's keep it moving. Let's move on into this next game. A little bit more of a boring game, but I think there's a little bit of a narrative coming out of this one that I'm excited to talk about. It is the
Yes.
Orlando Magic talking about playing against the Chicago Bulls. Currently, Bulls are favored 1.5 points at home, over under set of 216. Let's start off with this Orlando side first. I think that it's a good matchup. There's going to be a little bit of pace here for them to end up get going against the Bulls because they're not a very good pace team right now. Or sorry, I have that mixed up. Other way around.
Yeah.
They should get a little bit of a pace up here, or pace down. Sorry. I don't know. Does anything stick out to you? Like I don't really see anything that I really love. And when this team is, I mean, they're not fully healthy. We've got to figure out injury designations on Markel Fultz, who's TBD, Gary Harris, who's TBD right now. I assume we'll
Is
have
he?
that
I thought he
news.
was out.
I might need to refresh my page, but I opened this a little bit ago. Oh, there we go. Markel's out. Gary Harris is available. Must have come out while I was launching or whatever. Um, what do you like here? I don't really feel like there's anything that sticks out here.
No, I would have had a little bit of interest in Suggs, but I don't think you need to go there with Gary Harris being back. We also don't know the status of Caruso. Looks more than likely that he's going to try to play here, and if that's the case, then scratch Orlando. I think that um, there are some, you can make cases, but they're just not as good of plays as anybody, any of the games we talked about before.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the other side because this Bulls side gets really interesting, especially when you find out that DeMar DeRozan's going to be out with some personal reasons. Then you also have Alex Caruso questionable, and you have Patrick Williams is probable. There's two narratives here. I think. I think the Vooch narrative is pretty obvious. He played for Orlando for a long time, got traded over to this
Yep.
Bulls team. That's the one that's a little bit more obvious. I think the other one that a lot of people have started talking about over the last couple of days is that Zach LaVine could potentially get traded, and
Yep.
I think there's a little bit of a chance that Chicago tries to use this as a showcase game. Don't know if it works all that well against a very good Orlando defense, but what are your thoughts here on the LaVine and Vooch narratives?
The Vooch narrative I love because, we would have talked about Wendell Carter in that side of it because he was going to smash in this spot. But they won't have that, and I think that Vooch will be able to take care of things. And even so, DeMar and Levine have been putting up some really big stinkers in the shooting department, and Vooch has been very consistent, 20 plus in the last several games in a row. You also talk about the pace up spot for the Chicago team, the narratives flying everywhere. Like, I think that they will not end the season with DeMar, Vooch, or Levine on the team. Maybe not even. Maybe not. Maybe one of them are still on the team, but it does feel like Levine's moving to a big market here very soon. Even though he might not want to. I don't know. There's mixed reports there. But yeah, I like the Levine stuff a lot. One thing I wanted to say for this, since we're talking about Levine, he said, Josh, according to at KCJ Hoop on X, they said that Zach LaVine in an interview told them that he has never gotten over Billy Donovan benching him late versus the Orlando Magic on November 18th, 2022,
Ooh,
last year.
no
So
way.
Yeah, there's a big narrative here in regards to that, regardless of the news that we've had this week on them. But yeah, bad vibes, but Levine's definitely got a chip on his shoulder for tonight's matchup.
Jared's a freaking wizard at pulling this stuff out, man. I mean, I used to think that I was the narrative guy back when I was with Sean, but you're an absolute wizard at pulling that stuff. I absolutely love it. I can get behind it. Um, Again, like the only thing I concern myself with is the fact that Franz is going to be on him,
Mhm.
and Franz is a top defender in the league when it's all said and done. I mean, defensive win
Sure.
share wise, he's top 10. Defensive rating, he's a very, very good player on this team. Tough matchup. But if you can get past that, then I think it's all money from there.
They also get a day of rest, so it is not a back-to-back situation. Halfway tempted to say that one of these guys goes berserk, and both of them honestly could. I know it's a
Yeah.
tough spot. So actually, I'm sorry. It's that they aren't. They're at home. They're in Chicago here, so it's not a traveling situation because they just went from Milwaukee to Chicago 2 days ago. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that it's really tough to find yourself there in cash games, but they are great pick 'em plays and tournament plays.
So that's kind of my question. Like, let's stick with the DFS side for just a moment. How important is this Chicago team compared to Dallas, compared to Boston and Philly, compared to Milwaukee and Toronto? Like, they have an equally high end star that is going to be out today, but I don't know where to rank them when you're facing off against such a good defense.
I think I rank Chicago guys over New York. Atlanta's not even in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a very big hypothetical string, so I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with this yet, because that's dependent on Kyrie, it's dependent on Joel, it's dependent on. Well, I don't think I can put Chicago guys over Toronto. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think you can put Chicago
Because
guys
those
over
guys are
Toronto.
already out.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree.
uh,
Um,
yeah,
Go ahead.
I think I also rank Lillard and Portis over Levine, Vooch as well.
Lillard and Portis over Levine and Vooch. Mm, I don't know. I'm so 50-50 on the Dame stuff. I feel like Levine and Dame are really, really close.
They certainly could be. I think the
They get the
bigger
same
difference
tough
is like
matchup.
Portis Vooch. Portis Vooch is you're going Portis as a direction because of price.
Yeah, price alone, that'll lead you that way. Without Markel Fultz, you're already kind of loaded at the point guard position, but like I'm halfway tempted to say I'll go right back to the well with Kobe White. He could be like the biggest beneficiary of all this, and the fact of he gets the rookie matchup with Anthony Black most likely, which is huge, and then he gets a spot where there's a I mean, Levine and Vooch are already accounting for around 25% of the usage rate there. There's
Mm-hmm.
only so much they can jump with DeMar's 25%. Kobe White could be the guy that takes the big leap.
He certainly could be. We're also waiting for Patrick Williams news and Caruso news. Both look like they're projected to have a good shot of going today. Man, this is tough. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not super sure about this, but I do like the Kobe White spot. Again, you're just going to have to pick the best. It's very similar to yesterday's slate where you just have to there's so many plays and you just got to kind of dial it in. But it all starts with the Kyrie domino. Like if we get that, then you kind of just have to lean Dallas. But if we don't get Kyrie news right away, then you're kind of just left in this like, where do these teams even fall?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no DeMar means that I think that the showcase is on. So yeah, I think that they could be out there and say, Zach, give us 25 shots tonight.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that end up happening. Are you ready to move over to pick'em stuff? Let's talk about that side a little bit.
Yeah, this is where I think things get a little bit more interesting in terms of viable stuff that we can talk about.
All right, what do you like?
I don't expect Levine to go 5 of 19 and 2 of 10 from 3 again. And I think even though the matchup is worse, that is a pace up spot for them. I just think that you can look at Zach LaVine numbers and feel pretty good about your situation. 26 and a half points is a lot to ask for, but if he's taking 25 shots, I think that is completely doable. The one where I feel a lot better about just in general numbers wise, I think Vooch gets over 20 points tonight. So that's where that sits at the moment.
I can buy into the Vooch stuff. Goga's easily the worst offender out of these bunch of guys. So in the starting lineup. So I think the Vooch spot is pretty solid. Orlando, anything you like over there?
I will pass.
I will pass as well. All right, let's move on. Let's get into this next game. Going to be another really fun one. It is going to be the Phoenix Suns taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Currently, the Suns are 6-point favorites. Over under is set at 224. Let's talk about this Minnesota team. Tough game overall yesterday. Ended up pulling out the W. Back to back games now going into Phoenix. And they were, where were they last night?
Golden State.
They were in Golden State. I mean, somewhat of a tough travel. I don't know. Still, regardless, though, how do you think this Minnesota team does against this Suns team that's been mediocre in terms of their defense?
They're going to get a spot where I think that they're fired up about getting a win and an in-season tournament win at that, and also the fact that they're going to have Gobert here. Like the big narrative for them for Minnesota is that people are going to just completely not care about them tonight. They're going to come into a spot where the big narrative of the day is that Beal, Booker, and Durant are all playing and available to go for the first time. And that's going to be the big storyline of the day. Minnesota comes in. They're going to be underdogs all season. And we talked about it on the show. They think that, and we believe, at least I think that we both agreed on this, that they have a very good shot at being the number one seed in the West. Or at least having a top two record in the West. Maybe I'm talking out of my butt here, but I'm pretty sure we said that on the show last week. So I think that that is motivation enough. In terms of DFS, I have zero interest. But in terms of narrative, I mean, I think Minnesota can make this thing as close as we think it will be.
Yeah, I don't think I can find anything. I really think you should try. I mean, like, the points in the paint given up by Phoenix are not going to improve because of them getting the big three back together here.
Uh-huh.
And they're some of the worst in the NBA when it comes to points allowed in the paint. Currently ranked sixth worst. I think someone takes advantage of it, man. It's just a question of who, and I think that's what I'm having the most trouble with. I could see Rudy having a good game. I could see Cat having a good game. I guess if you're looking for a predominant inside scorer, it's got to be Rudy. Um, I think Edwards has a little bit of a bounce back game after a pretty poor showing last night. I don't think it's anything I'm willing to bet on in DFS, but I think it's a lot of good pick'em stuff.
Yeah, it's really good pick'em stuff, and I would say the same thing about. I would say the same. Who would I say it about? I forgot. Oh, Luka. I would say the same thing about Luka. And how many days in a row does he have a bad game? And Edwards is the same thing, and you know that he's going to get up for this game against Devin Booker, and in a spot where they just will be the team that's less talked about today. So I like that a lot. I was looking to see if we had any historics with Yusuf versus Rudy Gobert. We don't have much. Nothing necessarily stands out. So a lot of weird stuff with Portland and a lot of weird stuff with Rudy. But I think that, talking about narrative and I guess not a lot of basketball talk is that Rudy, out of anybody, could have one of the better, bounce back games after getting ejected yesterday.
I mean, he's had a really good run against Nurk in the past. I'm looking at it now. Has had 45 or more FanDuel points in each of the last 7 games. Has just kind of dominated him on the boards and everything else. I don't mind the Rudy Gobert stuff the more that I look at it. I think it's really solid. I'm going to be really curious to see pick'em options because that
good
could
for
be
pick'em. Yeah.
I think this is going to be. I'll plant it here. I think this is a flag playing for me with Rudy Gobert. I don't think many people will be on him. I think he's great for tournaments. I like the Gobert spot quite a bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about the other side. And while I know everyone is really excited to see this big three, one, I wonder how they're going to meld. Two, you're going up against the best defensive team in the NBA right now, and a lot of good guys that can take away the ball from elite players. I want to give you this question, a little bit of quiz time. Can you guess who is the number one guy on the Timberwolves when it comes to defensive win shares?
It's obviously not the obvious not the obvious guy. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna say that it is Ant Edwards.
it is Ant Edwards, man. Incredible defense so far this season. I mean, you think about that. Like he was never regarded as a high end defender, and he has
No,
completely turned it around this season. He is rated better than guys like Jason Tatum, Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson, Drew Holiday, OG Anunoby, Franz Wagner. Like you go through some of the top defenders in this league, and he's the best of them right now. So he's been playing incredible defense. This is the only team in the NBA where 4 of their players are in the top 10 of defensive win shares, and that's Anthony
yeah.
Edwards, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson. So like,
People
and
could
that's
probably figure out who isn't in that group.
yeah, for sure. I mean, we say that Cat's top 15, Nas is top 15. Like this team just plays really good defense. It's been their identity all year. So everyone's excited for the Suns team. I'm not. I would completely fade them today. I think the Timberwolves win this game. I think the Suns are it's gonna take a little bit, just like we're seeing with the Clippers. It's gonna take a little bit for this all to mesh together.
Minnesota +6.
Yeah, Minnesota +6 is the move.
If you couldn't hear that, I might have cut out. But
yeah, I
this is the
agree.
classic. Like we had a lot of drama last night, but Phoenix has the bigger storyline. We're going to come in and just not blow the doors off, but it's going to definitely put a damper on the party, the welcome party.
I am so excited for this game. I'm thrilled about this game. Just to watch it, not DFS wise. I think DFS wise you can get away with not playing much. But in terms of basketball fandom, I'm pretty stoked about what this game holds. I mean,
Definitely.
very realistic that you could see these two teams in the Western Conference Finals when it's all said and done. Hurts my heart a little bit as a Lakers fan, but I think it's true. Let's talk about pick'em stuff because I don't think we're interested in anything from the Sun side. So talking about the Timberwolves, I'm just automatically going to go to this Rudy number. 24 and a half or 23 and a half points and rebounds, 33 and a half fantasy score. Lock it in. I'm totally behind that.
That 33 number is really low. That could honestly be a top 3 play of the slate. When all said and done. I love the rebound number as well. And considering it's not a scorcher, but I like the double-double opportunity here.
Yeah, I can get behind it. Gobert at 11 rebounds. He has cleared or pushed this number in each of the last. Oh my goodness, man!
He has 10 a lot.
19 of 20.
But yeah, it's a lot.
Well, I'm not even rebounds 12, 20, 16, 20, 20, 17, 13, 14, 11, 13. So almost like 9 of the last 10 he's covered this number. And the one game where he didn't cover this number, he still put up 51 FanDuel points against this team. So, or not against this team, against Nurkic. That was against the Trailblazers last year. So, yeah, really like the Rudy spot. I think that's where I'm leaning over everything.
Last mention, I don't want to burst the bubble and ruin a good take, but they have not played a back-to-back this year. That feels weird to say, but looking at it and just eyeballing it, I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Does that concern you at all?
No, I don't think so. Too early in the season to concern me. And yesterday was all funky. I'm not concerned with the back-to-back. I think it's just fine. All right.
Okay.
Anything else in this? Or let's talk about the Sun side. You know, with all this talk about defensive stuff that we really like from the Timberwolves, if anything looks a little bit high, I would take an under.
Yeah, we hate to be the Debbie Downers on the Suns, but they're just not relevant today.
No.
It's going to take some time to figure it out. I'm a Clippers not bandwagon hater. I drive the bandwagon hate train for the Clippers, but the Suns, they'll figure it out. I think I'm just waiting to get them in better matchups. So I'm okay with the under too. I would say maybe an under on Durant, considering that he has the biggest leash of the 3.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I would take an under on PRA or fantasy score is what I would lean towards. Actually, I don't even know if that's the truth. Actually, give me the under on Devin Booker because I think Ant's the most reliable defender in this system right now, and with Minnesota, and I think he's going to be attached to him all game long. That's where I'll go because I think Conley will be on Beal. I think Jaden slash Cat will end up being on Kevin Durant. So I want the guy that Edwards is guarding, and I think it's going to be Booker.
This is a
And coming,
weird. This is a really weird. This is my last thing. Then we can move on. I think that it feels low, and it feels like a spot where if you don't want to take it, then don't take it. But I'm actually slightly interested in going with a Nurk under, because if you put him in the starting lineup with those three guys now and whoever
oh
else
yeah,
starts, there's no way he's involved on the offensive end. And I just think that he loses a lot of rebound opportunities from Cat and from Edwards and from Gobert. Give me the under of 21.5 PRA there.
I can get behind it. He's actually done decently well against this Minnesota front court, but that's also with Portland, where Dame was the only star he was playing with most of the time. So I can get behind it for sure. All right. Anything else here? If not, let's talk about this next game.
Next game is fine.
Next game, let's move on. Kings facing off against the Lakers. Currently, Lakers are 1.5 point favorites. Over under is set at 235. This is the other pretty high total game that we have on the slate today. There should be some good pace played here with the fact that Fox is going to be back. We saw him fully back as well. Did not look like he missed a step against Cleveland. Ended up scoring 30 plus in that, or 28 in that game. Looked really good. Let's talk about this Kings team first. I know we hate it, and I know it's something that we have been hesitant to go to, but I am so down with the Keegan Murray numbers today. I can get behind the play. I think he is a better player when Fox is in the lineup, when he has I'm not going to say competent, that's mean. When he has an elite playmaker like Fox, Keegan gets open shots. And I don't know, I have not got a chance to watch a lot of Lakers game this year. I watched not first, I think it's my second in full one last night. Good win by the boys, by the way. Let's go Lake Show. That was a great win against that Grizzlies team that seemed to stick around. But the number one thing I noticed, they are abysmal in defending the three. And it might not show up because of pace stats right now, because they're just not letting teams run a fast pace on them. So they're not giving up a lot of attempts or anything. But I think they are going to continue to be one of the worst teams against 3-point range. And I think Keegan's going to go pretty ballistic here.
He feels like Josh Giddey in a way where you don't really want to play it by himself anymore. And you want to play when everybody's healthy, or when Shea's healthy in that case. So I don't think it's necessarily DFS relevant, but in tournaments and pick'em, I think that's where the conversation steps up, because I don't know, I feel a little bit gross playing him at 6,800. But you're right in terms of Fox being back certainly unleashes that strong floor again. But if you get anything less than 30, you're kind of sunk with this.
Yeah, for sure. I don't mind it in DFS tournament builds. For cash games, I'd probably stay away, but for DFS tournament stuff, I can get behind it. Talk about the rest of the team. What else do you like? I think Sabonis encounters an incredibly tough matchup. I think Fox could really get going here against this Lakers team. We saw him get going in that first matchup they played where he had 56. I don't mind going back to De'Aaron Fox if we wanted to go there.
Sure, I'm okay with that. I would love to see if there's any drive stats on this. Maybe I don't think you have it ready available right now, but maybe we can talk about Fox and that from that angle. But I can at least say at the moment that you are right. A lot of 3-point stuff here, not looking great for the Lakers in terms of defense. They give up the fourth most 3-point attempts per game, and they give up the 7th highest 3-point shooting percentage at 38%.
Yeah. I have the drive number. Can you guess where it ranks among the NBA?
Fox, it's kind of tough because he missed a couple games.
It's averaged out, so it's averaged per game.
He's a top 10 drive guy, so I'd say 8.
He's top 5 drive guy. He's number 4 right now.
Okay.
Tied with Trae Young at 17.3. Yeah, he's a massive drive guy. It worries me a little bit because the more you drive into the paint, the more you have to deal with Anthony Davis. And
don't love that. And
I don't know how much
the hair helps too.
Oh my
better
goodness,
defense.
man. That hair has to add like an extra like 3 inches to the height. It's insane.
Yeah.
I think it looks awful, but that is just me. Um, I still think that like he played really well last night. He is showing up on defense more and more. That's where they need him. And if he's guarding the paint, it's going to be really tough for Fox to end up getting there. So I think pace could keep Fox in it in terms of that, but I don't know. Something to be concerned about for sure. Anything else that you like on the Sacramento team?
I think this is where you stay away from Sabonis. I don't think he's much of a relevant conversation piece today.
So maybe that's something that helps draw Anthony Davis out of the paint a little bit, is that Sabonis will play from 3 point range a little bit more. That could help out Fox. But I will say that like Jaren Jackson looked lost out there last night when it comes to um, when it came to playing up against Anthony Davis. He just looked completely lost.
Yeah, that is true. We've already just seen this play out. Fox and Murray had monster games, and Sabonis had one of his worst games of the season when they played the Lakers last time.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about the other side. Talk about this Lakers team. I imagine they're going to be pretty healthy for this one. Still going to be without the usual suspects in Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, and their rookie and Jalen Hood. Um, what do you like from the Lakers here, if anything?
I love Davis as a tournament play. He is not going to play him over Luka in cash. So I would say that that's one of the only things that I'll even bring up for this. Crushed this matchup last time. Do we know why he played 26 minutes yesterday?
Blowout. They were up at like 30 at one point.
Okay, I didn't. That's the last. I didn't watch that game because it wasn't relevant for us.
Yeah,
So, 55 fantasy points in 26 minutes. I mean, you gotta like the upside, and the rest factor on the back to backs very strong here too. They didn't travel, did they? They played at
no,
home last night.
yeah, they played at home last night.
Okay, yeah, I like Davis a lot. I think we can talk about him and pick him.
Yeah, for sure. Let's. I think DFS wise, this team's irrelevant unless we get like a unless we get an injury report on someone end up missing because of the back to back. But I doubt you do. Let's talk about pick'em like we said. Let's start off with this Kings team. Keegan Murray's at 2.5 three pointers made. I'm all over it. I love it. I don't even mind taking over 27.5 fantasy score.
I like that a lot, actually. And he obviously hit that in the first matchup last year
Mm-hmm.
or this year.
What else do you like
Um,
here from the Kings?
from the Kings, I don't necessarily want to. I guess I'd be doubling down on the take, but 37.5 points, rebounds, assists for Sabonis just feels like a number that's not necessarily as in reach as it could have been. I'm probably okay with taking an under and probably just end up staying away from it. But I do like the De'Aaron Fox stuff as well. And if he's not going to have any minutes limit, then I think he's just a full go here. So would be looking mostly at a fantasy number, but points assists at 33.5 is solid as well.
For sure. All right. Anything on the Lakers side for you?
Just Davis. Uh, I would be relying on you for a PrizePicks fantasy point number, but if it's anything, first of all, I like the 25.5 points for Davis, but I'd be more focused on making sure that the blocks and steals were accounted for. So if it's anything under 55, I'll be glad to take that.
53.5. I can get behind
Why
it.
not?
Yeah. This is the ESPN game of the night. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check that before I say it, just in case. Yeah, it is the ESPN game. So, of course, I've got to mention LeBron. I wouldn't mind taking a rebound assist number for LeBron. I don't think he'll factor into scoring too much, but I think rebounds will be there for him against a relatively small Kings team, and assists will certainly be there for him. So, our rebounds and assists is at 15.5. I can get behind it.
Yeah, he had 23 in the last matchup.
Yeah, yeah. Tells you a little bit about
Yeah.
that. All right. Anything else here? If not, let's move on to the last game of the slate.
Nope, let's move on.
All right, last game is going to end up being the Cleveland Cavaliers facing off against the Portland Trailblazers. Currently, the Cavs are 10.5 point favorites on the road. Over-under is at 219. Let's start off with this Cavs team. We got the news earlier yesterday that Darius Garland's going to be out of this one due to a neck injury. Isaac Okoro also going to be out. So like we talked about all these great pay up plays, and now you land on a spot where you have Donovan Mitchell, and without Darius Garland, he just completely takes over, man. So how much are you considering the Donovan Mitchell play, if at all?
I don't want to play this game, but you have to talk about it.
You have to, for
You
sure.
have to. You have to. Donovan Mitchell can absolutely cook in this spot. That's, I think, one of the problem is not the problem. They've gone and played in a lot of really, really competitive games. And we know that this Cleveland team actually is running a bit faster than expected to start off the season. They're right in the middle of the pack here. They're going to get a little bit of a down pace spot, but in this matchup where I just don't expect, we shouldn't expect Jeremy Grant on Donovan Mitchell. And if you think that he takes away Evan Mobley, who would be the team's second scorer, then, I mean, there's no one that can stop Mitchell in the spot. The only problem that I see is blowout. And the second one is, can he just put up enough real life points to hit value and convincingly hit value? I think 45 for Mitchell is not enough here.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think you need a massive performance. I think you need around 55 to 60. He's done 55 once, or he's gotten in that range 3 times so far this season. All of them were games without Garland. So, like, I think it's certainly possible.
Of course,
I think the spot, I think the spot is solid. It's going to be a good matchup for him. It's just a question of like, can you get there at that price tag with all these other great plays on the slate? It's going to be a little bit tough, but I do think he's in a tremendous spot. Another guy I think is a tremendous spot, and maybe it's more of a pick'em conversation because like the minutes living hasn't been lifted, but I really like Jared Allen. We see this Trailblazers team just get torched by centers. We saw it last night with John Collins. And I think you could see it tonight with Jared Allen. They are like the worst center team against centers in the league in terms of fantasy points allowed. So I really like Allen. I think he could dominate this matchup. Again, I don't think it's a DFS conversation because his price tag's kind of based into the fact that he plays a full go, and I don't think he does. But in Pick'em, there's going to be some stuff I like about it.
Sure, I like Allen. I like Strus as well. LeVert coming off the bench, like those are all. I mean, I guess who gets the Tybal matchup?
I don't know if anyone does. Yesterday they started Tumani Kamara.
Kamara. I got confused because I was like, that's not how you spell that, but
yeah,
strange.
We'll talk about Tumani on the other side. I think he's a menace. I don't mind playing him tonight.
Last thing before we switch over, what answered the? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say Tumani's been like one of their top defenders in terms of defensive win share. So it's a similar situation where like you want to avoid Tybal, you most likely want to avoid Tumani. I think Tumani would end up getting Strus most likely, if I had to guess, or Dean Wade. Maybe they hide him on Dean Wade. And let's Sharp take Strus. It'll be interesting to see, though. I don't think it factors into things too much.
I do like LeVert. I think somebody's going to benefit with Okoro out. Like, it's not like Okoro is the Okoro of last year. I mean, he actually kind of reverted back to that a little bit. But I don't know. This is a strange conversation to have, but some of these pieces could be in some really good spots. It's just, again, you compare them to Dallas, Washington, you compare them to Milwaukee. It's a very tough slate in regards to how, and people are just going to probably sleep or have all of their spots locked by this time. And, all of the Pandora's box stuff that comes from that. But one thing I wanted to say before we moved on to Portland, FanDuel, I think that the Donovan Mitchell conversation actually is fair and easy. I think you would probably lean on Scotty Barnes or Lillard or somebody in that general conversation. But on DraftKings, this conversation gets so much tougher because I think you, again, outside of Luka, I think you can only play one guy that's in the 9K range. And they just hit it right on the money here where Mitchell is 9,100, Barnes is 9,100, and Lillard is 9K. So what do you do with that?
Oh man,
It's
I
an
think
impossible answer to have right now. I know.
yeah. So who is in this mix here? You said Donovan Mitchell and who else?
I think that in the case of you playing Doncic, which we said was a clear lock and load, I still think that. But I would say if you're listening and you disagree with me, then you have a little bit more flexibility to play 2 9K guys on DraftKings. But if you're playing Doncic at 12, you have Scotty Barnes at 92, you have Mitchell at 91, and you have Lillard at 9K. And you have Fox at 83, just for that what that's worth.
You have Maxey at 95 too. Like if Embiid misses, that's another
Exactly.
huge conversation you have to have. I don't know, man. I think the Luka conversation gets a little bit more rough on DK. It's still an elite play, man. It's just like it feels like you have to play 3 of those 9K guys, and you can't
Yeah.
play Luka and 2 9K guys. It won't fit today.
Well, I think if Irving's out, you just are playing Luka. But I
Yeah,
understand that if he is not, if Kyrie is in, then that conversation at least is an option because you are saving 3K on
for
DraftKings.
sure. For sure. All right. Let's move on to the other side. Let's talk about this Portland game a little bit more, and talk about the Portland side. Cleveland has been the worst team in the league against the point guard position, and if that holds up, man, I hate to wait on this news because I think you're saving up a very valuable spot late into the main slate, but like Brogdon or Skylar Mays, whoever ends up starting here, could be absolutely massive. We might have gotten Brogdon news. I haven't seen it. Currently have it as GTD,
Yeah.
or not GTD, TBD, to be announced. But whatever happens with Brogdon, if Brogdon plays, I want Brogdon. If Skylar Mays plays, I definitely don't mind Skylar Mays.
It's a very tough second point guard decision.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. You can actually play May. You can actually play Brogdon and Mays at shooting guard too. So I guess I'm just throwing this out there. Well, they're so different in price, man. That kind of sucks. I was gonna say play Levert and then you can pivot, but you can't do that on FanDuel. They're too far away in price. I don't know how I feel about this because the game could really get out of hand. Brogdon's not going to play a blowout, so I don't know if this is worth waiting for.
Does it get out of hand though? Like that
It's
massively?
a 10-point
Like
spread at the moment.
I know, but like I want to see Cleveland's games without Darius Garland. Like I think losing. I'm wondering how many of these games they were really like blowing out teams. Cavaliers. Oh come
Well,
on,
the
just give me
OKC
some.
game was close, so that was a huge one for Mitchell.
Uh huh.
That Indiana game was huge. I think that they ended up just sneaking a win out of that one too. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure.
I'm not sure either. It's a tough conversation. I think we'll have more clarity on it once we get some of these injuries in and figure out exactly what happens there. But we need to get more injury news before we can feel comfortable about any of this late slate stuff. Let's talk prize picks and underdog, and then we can get out of here. Let's start off with Donovan Mitchell numbers, man, because I think the spot's pretty massive, 29.5 points. You've got to have it stay close, and that's the only thing that I could really find myself concerned with.
Yeah, that's what I concern myself with as well. You get the spot where you said that the 3 games over 50 fantasy points has been without um, Darius Garland, and so even in that first one, I think they were missing Allen too, which adds a little bit to this. I was gonna say just go straight points. Um, I probably will stick with that take. So I think it's just 30 points for me.
Yeah, I can get behind 30 points. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think he most likely ends up getting there. Just not a lot of other guys to score in this offense. Like I think Allen can do well, but with his limited time, it's going to be tough. I think Kamara being on Max Strus is going to make it tough for him, and all the way around. Is there any interest in a guy like Karis LeVert here? Because he's been the one that's really showing out, and we saw him a little bit struggle with things coming out of the gate without Garland, but we did see that big 50 burger against the Pacers. We saw 30. We saw just below 30 in a couple games. Is there any interest in a bench guy for Cleveland, or a secondary guy like LeVert or Strus?
Yeah, I mean, with Okoro and with Garland out, I think LeVert is very, very solid. But the problem is that he is on the high range of all of the mid price wing plays. So that's where he'd probably fall and lose the argument to a Tim Hardaway, a Koulibaly, or a Portis, or just some of those guys. So I think he's a solid play. I wanted to, when I was trying to make the conversation for what happens with Brogdon, I wish you could find LeVert in a range where that would make sense to have him in there, and then you pivot off and play one of Mays or Brogdon. The problem is the Portland guys are too expensive.
For sure. All right. Anything else here on the Portland side in terms of pick 'em? I think you got to wait for Brogdon news before you can make a determination. I guess the one thing I could get behind is a Jeremy Grant under. I wouldn't mind going under 34 fantasy score, 23.5 points. I think he gets pretty locked up by Mobley today. I think it's a really tough matchup for him.
I'm okay with the under there, and you can't play this right now. But if Brogdon's out, Skylar Mays over assists. It's a number that's too low right now. He's double digits 3 games in a row.
For sure. All right. Jared, final thoughts. How do members win all the money today?
Can we just, I guess, I'll go with my classic. I don't know the answer to that at the moment. But I want to circle back and end the show on this conversation. We need to discuss whether or not we can play 5 players from Dallas, Washington, now that we know all this news. And I think the answer leans towards no. And I think that obviously it's dependent on Kyrie news, but I would feel pretty gross coming into the slate now after talking it through with you, knowing that if I have 3 Dallas players with all of this other news, I don't think that's the correct move anymore.
Yeah, I think it gets really hard to play a lot of Dallas when you have all these other really good spots on the slate. I feel like Washington's a little bit easier because they're cheaper overall, but I don't know. I didn't, and it's hard to find the really stick out guy that you really want from this Dallas team too. I think that's something that I at least run into.
So we left the first game of the slate feeling pretty confident that we would be playing 5 or 4 pieces of this. I think that it is many times how this slate plays out, probably closer to the 3 or 4 range.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think the 3 or 4 range is just about right. Probably leaning towards 3. If 4 if Kyrie's out, but leaning towards 3. I think it's a really juicy slate. I think there's a ton of edges that I already see that I think people can go the wrong way with that we can get right. I'm thrilled about it. I think it's a really good slate. It should be a lot of fun. Pick'em Optimizer has been on a roll, like I said early on in the show. That'll be posted a little bit later. My article's coming out soon. Jared's article's coming out soon. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here, man?
It's a really fun Wednesday slate. This would be the one where, I think that you just have to take, if you feel really strong about a play that isn't reliant on injury news, do that, but wait a little bit longer if you haven't placed entries yet.
For sure. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you all for listening. And as always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.